All right, good afternoon, everyone. We have started recording. Welcome to our session this evening that we are having. This is all about tax treaty for J1 teachers, H1B teachers. This is a tricky topic. And if you don't know about it, it could cost you in the long run. My name is Rochelle Lindsay. I am an international teacher here from Jamaica. I originally came up on EPI about 7 years ago, and I did not know about the tax treaty when I came up initially. And so I did not benefit from it in the first year. But in the second year, I was able to benefit from it because through talking with other people and networking, I was able to, learn about it. And I went to the right person, and it made a difference in my life in my second year. So I also want to be able to share that knowledge with other people. And so today we have with us Mr. Ryan Maxwell, who is an expert in this field. And he's going to share with us today about the tax treaty and other things as well related to tax for teachers, J1 teachers, H1B teachers, or general workers in general. So let me introduce him to you. Ryan Maxwell went to Glenmuir in Jamaica and has a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Tampa in Florida. He's a certified public accountant for over 10 years. He specializes in helping international teachers prepare and navigate the tax treaty exemption. He's the managing partner at Maxwell Associates Incorporation and a tax firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Mr. Maxwell. I'm going to just turn it over to you right away so that you can, enlighten us about the tax treaty and all tax related things.
Right. Okay. Great. Thanks for having me, Ms. Lindsay. I appreciate it. I know you guys probably got your lesson plan that you're getting ready to prepare or start preparing or in the process of preparing or probably doing some other stuff. But this is valuable information that you're going to need because when you come on the program, no one talks to you about taxes. And this is one of your biggest incentives for actually coming on the program. And also it has to do with money. And we love to make sure that we have our money in our pocket, right? So I want to appreciate Miss Lindsay and the admin team for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys about this because it's very important. So just to add some color to my background. So I went to school in Glenmuir. I'm a footballer, so I played football for Glenmuir in Clarendon. I'm not sure if we have any Glenmuirites on here, but I'm originally from Clarendon. And then I went to Glenmuir, played football up there and got a football scholarship to the University of Tampa. That was in 2005. So that kind of give you some context of how old I am. So that's in 2005 went to the University of Tampa, got my bachelor's, master's down there. And then I got my CPA. So CPA is similar to what we have in Jamaica, I think, is the ACCA, right? It's a rigorous exam that you have to take. And, not a lot of people have a CPA, right? So I'm a CPA. Then I started working for some local, CPA firm in the Tampa Bay area. And then just, doing taxes and learning how to do taxes for corporation, individual. I got all that tax knowledge. And then I eventually started my firm here in Atlanta. And I've just been working with international teachers and helping them, like Ms. Lindsay said. Okay, so if, we did the survey, a lot of people here are J1 first time, in the US. So this is a good place for you. When you leave this presentation, you're gonna be in a good place in order to take that information and go elsewhere. Either you go elsewhere to get your tax done, you can ask the right question. You have a good foundation of what to expect when you're getting your tax done. All right, so we're trying to keep it within an hour, but sometimes I do get carried away because this is my passion, talking about taxes. So we're going to go to the presentation and then we're going to have some questions. So as soon as they come up with a question, just put them in the chat, right? And we'll get to all of the questions at the end of the presentation. I think that kind of works best because sometimes, I just by going with the presentation, I'll answer the question that you may have. So let's just put it, if you have a question, put it in the chat. And then at the end, we'll get to it. All right. So let's dive into it. All right. So as a teacher, right? You know, you guys. So this is what I want you guys to take away from the presentation, right? This is an overview. At the end of the presentation, you should be able to understand your filing obligation as a J1 teacher, as a non-resident, right? You should be able to have a good understanding of, okay, these are my filing obligations. And then I'm going to show you some forms that you're expected to get when you're preparing your taxes. And you're supposed to be familiarized with these forms as well, right? And then this is the big one that everyone kind of signed up for, the tax treaty exemption, right? Which is a special rule. Not a lot of people are familiar with this, right? It's only if you're working with non-resident and know the tax treaty between, for that particular country. So you have to understand the tax treaty for Jamaica. You have to understand the tax treaty for India or the Philippines or whatever country that teacher is from. You have to understand the tax treaty to actually get this right, right? And also FICA, there's a FICA exemption for international teachers as well. So FICA stands for Social Security and Medicare taxes, right? We're going to touch a little on that. And then amended tax return. So what if you mess up your tax return in the first year? I got people that mess up their tax return in their first and second year. What if you mess up your tax return in the first and second year? Can we fix that? And the answer is yes. So we're going to touch a little bit on the amended tax return. And then we're going to talk about the tax process itself, what it's going to look like come January. And then, like I said, at the end, we're going to have the questions and discussion, right? So these are the stuff, the overview of what I want you guys to, keep straight in your head as we go through the process, right? The filing status, some forms, the tax treaty, the FICA exemption amended, and the tax process, okay? All right, so here's the first topic. All right, so there's some important dates that you guys need to familiarize with, right? Tax return is done on a calendar year, right? So even though you come here, most people come here in July or August, right? It's a calendar year. So whatever income you earn from July to August, from July to December, right? That's the income that you're going to pick up on your tax return, right? And you file your taxes the next year. So we look back. So in January, the tax season is going to start in January, roughly like the third week of January, and it goes until April 15th. So within that time period, you can file your taxes. The IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, they're the one that's responsible for administrating the tax return process. They're going to open the season at the late part of like January, and it goes through all the way to April 15th. That's when you file your taxes, right? And you look back. So when January 2025 comes, we're actually filing a tax return for the tax year 2024, right? So you always look back and record whatever income you're making that year. That's what you got to, in that previous year, that's the tax return that we are filing for, even though we're in January. Sometimes people get confused with that, but it's a look back process, right? And some teachers are in like states that does not have a state tax, right? So in Florida and Texas and South Dakota and Washington, those states does not have a state tax, right? But if you're in like South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, those states have a state tax. So you will file two tax returns. You will file a federal tax return, and then you will file a state tax return, right? And then for the Florida people, they only file like one tax return, because that's why people love Florida, because they do not take any taxes out of your paycheck for state purposes. It's only for federal. And I already touched on this. So the filing season, again, sometimes, the third week or the fourth week in January, they're going to open up the season, and that's tax season starts that all the way to April 15th. And then for the first time people, you're going to get what is called a W-2. I'm going to show you what it looks like later on in the presentation, but you're going to expect to get your W-2 like the third or fourth week in January. You can either, go to the portal, like some district, they send you in the mail, or if you have access to your payroll portal, you can just go into forms and you get your form W-2, right? The W-2 is pretty much a form that shows you all the income that you made for that year and all the taxes that have been taken out of your paycheck for that year, right? And then some people also get what is called a 1099, right? If you're like a self-employed person, like you're not an employee, you will get like a 1099, and sometimes those come in January as well. So what happens sometimes is people do not get their tax information in time, right? You do not get like your W-2 or the information that you need to file a tax return within that tax period, like the January through the April 15. If you do not get your information in a timely manner, you can apply for an extension, right? And the extension is a 6-month extension where you say, okay, I do not have my information now. I'm expecting to get my information soon. I'm applying for this extension, and you got an extension to file a tax return by October 15. It's a 6-month extension, right? So again, if you don't think you have all the information that you need, you have to file an extension within the January through April 15, and then you get a 6-month extension to submit the tax form before October 15. So hope that kind of makes sense. All right. So the takeaway from here is that it's a calendar year. Doesn't matter if you come here in January or August, whatever income you make for that particular year, you have to report it on your tax return. And then the tax season start in January all the way to April 15. And then sometimes in January, you will get your W-2 and your 1099, and you also can apply for an extension. So that's a takeaway in terms of like important dates that I want you to learn. It's January through April. All right. So here's another thing that tripped up a lot of people, right? There's two filers in America, right? You got the U.S. citizens and citizens, and U.S. citizens and green card holders. They file a separate form from you guys, which is a non-resident, right? So I get this all the time where, people file on the wrong form and we have to do an amended return. So the regular citizens and resident file on a form called 1040. And then the non-resident, which you guys are, right? For the first 2 years, international teachers, you guys are going to be considered a non-resident, right? And you guys have to file on the 1040 NR, which stands for non-resident, right? In your third and your fourth year, if you're still here, even though you're a non-resident, you're going to meet what is called a substantial presence test, where they look back at the years that you've been here and said, oh, even though you're a non-resident, no, you meet what is called a substantial presence test, and you can file on the regular form that U.S. citizens and resident filed on, right? So again, two different forms. Regular U.S. citizens and resident file on one form. I'm going to show you what our form look like, the non-resident form. And then if you're a non-resident, you file on a separate form. So, right? So I got people like come up to me and say, Mr. Maxwell, I was able to do such and such and such on my form last year. Why can't I do it this year? It's because you filed on the wrong form. You were able to claim dependents, married filing jointly, claim student credit, earned income credit, all of the regular stuff that American citizens and resident does. But for a normal non-resident, you can't do all of those stuff until you meet what is called a substantial presence test. And that's going to happen in your third and your fourth year and your fifth year while you're here. All right. All right. So that's the takeaway from that slide. All right. So like I said, in January, you're going to receive what is called, so these are some typical taxable income, right? You're going to receive what is called a W-2 from the district. And your W-2 just shows you, again, the wages that you receive from that district and the amount of taxes that you pay for that particular period, right? And then I got teachers that are investors. They invest in stocks or Google or Microsoft or Facebook, and they receive what is called dividend, right? If you have stocks and that company pay a dividend, you're gonna receive what is called a Form 1040 DNV, right? That shows the dividend that you receive. You have to pay taxes on that dividend that you receive from that particular country, right? And then if you're not a employee, if you're self-contract, because in the summertime, some teachers get jobs where, the district may employ them to go pick up, people from the airport and drop, and they'll pay them money. They're not really an employee. It's like a contractor. So you're self-employed. right? So the district will send them what is called a 1099 miss, right? That shows them the income that they receive. So those are the typical forms that you will receive in your first year. All right, so this is what the W-2 looks like, right? This is one of my client W-2, right? So you will see on here where it says wages, tips, and other compensation. You will see you will see your total wages that you made for the year in this column right here. And then any taxes that been taken out of your paycheck, you will see it on this column in 2, where on this client they made like $45,000, $5,375 was taken off for taxes. This W-2 is for someone that was in their first year, right? Because in the first year, your first and your second year, you're not supposed to be paying any Social Security or Medicare tax. So on this one, the district is doing it correctly, where this person is not paying any Social Security or Medicare tax, right? So you will see like Social Security wages, there's nothing. Social Security tax withheld, there's nothing. And then Medicare wages and tips, nothing. And then Medicare tax withheld, nothing, right? So this is doing it correctly, right? We have instances where that's not the case, right? And we'll talk about what you need to do if you find that they're taking taxes out of your paycheck for like the Social Security and Medicare, right? And then over here, you will see like the district name and address. And then down here, you will see your information, right? Down here is where we have, down at the bottom right here, you will see the state information, right? So like I said, for those teachers that are in like state that has a state income tax, you will see, again, the same wages up here, the 45,000, you will see it down here. And then the amount of taxes that you pay, you will see this person paid like 1016 in taxes, right? And believe it or not, in some state, you also have to pay like what is called a local tax. So like Ohio, for instance, and New York, you have to pay a New York City tax if you were working in New York. And for this teacher, you have to pay an Ohio tax, a local City of Columbus tax. So you can end up paying like 3 tax, 1 for federal, 1 for state, and then 1 for the local government. Unfortunately, this person has to pay like 3 tax being taken out of their paycheck. All right. So this is what the W-2 looks like. I want you to get familiar with what it looks like. I go through that fast mainly because I kind of pretty much just been familiarized with this already. But that's the W-2. All right. So here's another form that I want you to get familiarized with. This is the form 1040 NR, right? The form for the regular resident. Hold on just a minute. Mess. Turn that down, man. Sorry about that. All right. So this is the form for the non-resident, right? On the regular U.S. citizen form, you're not gonna have this non-resident on here. You're just gonna have the same information just for U.S. resident and citizens. So this is the form that you need to file on in your first and second year if you're international teachers, right? And I get this all the time, right? So that's why I wanted to put up this, because I get this all the time, because people that's coming to me for the first time for me to do their taxes, they will say, Mr. Maxwell, my friend have a daughter or a son, and they were able to claim that son on their tax return. You can't do that on a non-resident. All right. If you look on here where it says filing status, there's only 5 filing status that non-resident can do, right? You can do single. A single is just like a regular person's unmarried, that's just single. And then married filing separately. You're married, but you want to file separately from your spouse, right? You guys want to separate your income out. He files his own tax return, you file your own tax return, right? And then qualifying surviving spouse. This is like if you're 65 and older and one of your spouse die, then you can use this form. And then estate and trust. When you're non-resident, you do not get the luxury of married filing jointly, where both of you guys can file together. You do not get that luxury, and you also do not get the luxury of head of household. I get that all the time. That's one of the number one question that I get all the time. So that's why I wanted to put this up for you guys to see that there's no head of household when you're a non-resident, right? I get that all the time. They only make that exception if you're from Mexico, Canada, and South Korea. That's the reason why they have this dependent section here. They made an exception for those 3 countries, but for Jamaicans, you can't file married filing jointly, and you can't file head of household when you in your first 2 years. Again, you can do that when you're in your 3rd and your 4th and your 5th year when you switch, when you become, when you meet the substantial presence test, right? Also very important, when I tell people, hey, there's a tax treaty exemption between your country and the United States that, you know, enable you to get back all the taxes that you paid in your first year, people don't believe me. So that's why I wanted this presentation to show you. Look at this line. I let them read this line all the time. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's way down at the bottom. I was trying to fit everything inside of it. It says the total income exempt by a treaty, right? Hope you guys were able to see that. It's only on this form that you can claim that exemption. This line item is not going to be on the 1040 regular form that U.S. citizens and residents file their taxes on, because the U.S. do not have a tax treaty between its citizens and residents. It's only with non-resident that they have this tax treaty with, right? And you have to file on this form to get that special treatment, right? So again, this is the form that you need to be filing on in your first and your second year. Once you exhaust all of your tax treaty exemption and you meet the substantial presence test, then you can switch over to the regular U.S. form in your 3rd and your 4th year. Then you can do the regular stuff that U.S. citizens and residents do, even though you're a non-resident still. All right, so I briefly touched on it. So there's a special rule that not a lot of people are familiar with. And again, if you go up to a normal person to do your taxes in the United States, they're going to do your taxes as if you're a resident or a U.S. citizen, because they're not familiar with it. Because only if you're in this non-resident area would you understand these tax treaty exemption, right? So there's a special rule for teachers, and this is a teacher rule, right? It's teacher specific. It does not relate to if you're a mechanic or you're a plumber or you're a chef. It's only for teachers, right? And it says that if you're a teacher, you come here to work for the first 2 years, you're tax exempt. Tax exempt meaning you're not supposed to be paying any taxes for the first 2 years. But what happened is, you notice that the district been taking taxes out of your paycheck, which is fine. They're taking taxes out of your paycheck, but when it comes tax time, you just need to file a tax return to tell them that, hey, there's a treaty between my country and the United States, and you've been taking taxes on my paycheck. Can you please refund me this money that you've been taking out of my paycheck based on the treaty between my country and the United States, right? Some countries that are, you know, for me, some country that meet this exemption, again, is like Jamaica, the Philippines, India, Trinidad, right? Not our country. I know we got some Africans that signed up on for this meeting, but unfortunately, you know, the African country does not have a treaty with the United States, right? There's like 60 countries that has the special treaty. So Jamaicans, you guys are very lucky that you know, you guys have this tax treaty with the United States, right? And the state tax return follow the Fed, meaning meaning the Fed give you an exemption, and also the state give you an exemption, meaning whatever federal taxes you pay, you should get it back in your first 2 years. Whatever state taxes that you pay, you also should get that back in the first 2 years. And for that particular teacher that I was showing you the W-2, they also pay local tax. So whatever local tax that person paid, they should also get it back in the first 2 years if they're from one of these countries that has the special tax treaty, right? So that's what I want you guys to take away. You know, first 2 years, you're a non-resident and you qualify for this special treatment that not a lot of people are familiar with, where you should. So this is how you were able to audit my tax return. If you're in your first and in your second year, you can audit my tax return by saying, "Oh, Mr. Maxwell, just to check my tax return to make sure it was done correctly." You can look at this that says $5,375. If in your first 2 years, you can say, "Mr. Maxwell, why is my tax refund is not the $5,375? And then that I did it wrong, because you should be getting whatever taxes that you pay, you should get it back. So this is how you can check to see if I did your tax return correct, right? You look at this number to say federal tax withheld. This is what you should be getting back in your first if in your first 2 years, right? So if you're here in 24, you will see this number. Probably not going to be 5,000, but probably like 2,000, because you work half of the year. And then, in 25, if you're still here, maybe sometimes this number is like, 6,000, 7,000. This is the number that you will look at. In your third year, it's a little bit different to kind of, review my tax return by using this, right? Mainly because in your third year, right, you're gonna entitle to like 7 months of exemption, because mainly, remember, in 24, if you come in August, that's going to be August, September, October, November, December. That's going to be 5 months, right? And then 25, you will get like another 12 months in 25. And then 26, if you're still here, you're still eligible for another 7 months. So in 26, when I'm doing your tax return, I would have to divide up your income between what portion, 7/12 of that is going to be, for all of my math teachers, 7/12 of that income is going to be tax exempt, and 5/12 of that is going to be taxable, right? So you can't just look at the W-2 in year 26 and know for sure how much you're going to be getting back. But for year 1 and year 2, you can definitely just look at your W-2 and be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to be getting back, right? And for most of you guys now that receive your pay stub, you can look at your pay stub right now. Where you see federal tax withheld year to date, you can know for sure, okay, this is what I should be getting back. Where you see state tax year to date, okay, this is what I'm going to be getting back. If you're in your first and your second year. And most people that sign up for this presentation are in their first and second year. All right, so we touch on the tax treaty and then the FICA, right? So again, if you're in your first and your second year, you're not supposed to be paying this FICA. The FICA kicks in your third year. And again, FICA stands for like Social Security and Medicare. These taxes are for like when you're old, if you're a U.S. citizen or resident, and when you're old, 65 and older, you get some benefit. It's like a little pension that they give you back. And then, they pays for like your medical bills when you're older, right? Then your first and your second year, if you're J1, you do not pay this tax, and it's a calendar year treatment. So unlike the tax exemption, which runs on a 24-month basis, this FICA tax exemption is a calendar year, 2-year calendar. So if you come here again in 24 August, from 24 August all the way to 24 December, that's 1 year. Right, you do not get like 5 months. That's 1 year, and then in 25, tax year 25, that's another year, and then in 26, you will start seeing this coming out of your paycheck, right? We got situation where people are in their first and second year where the districts start taking this tax out of their paycheck. You can just reach out to the district to let them know, oh, hey, I'm a J1, I shouldn't be paying this tax. Can you refund me? And I have a situation where the district just refund the person. If it's a situation where later on you catch it that they were taking out this tax out of my paycheck, then you'd have to file a form with the IRS for them to send you back the money, because once the district take that money out of your paycheck, they automatically just send it to the IRS, right? So if you're waiting like several months before you notice there's an issue, you have to file a separate form to go get this money back from the IRS, right? So again, take away from here, Social Security tax and Medicare tax. If you're in your first and second year, you're not supposed to be paying any of this. And if you find out that you're paying this, reach out to the district first. If you catch it later on, then we'll have to talk to see what form we need to file for you to get it back from the IRS. All right. So I'm like when I'm doing a lot of people tax return, I notice, okay, they did it wrong. Like I said, 95% of people that does taxes here in the United States, they're not familiar with the non-resident status. They only do tax return for like the regular US citizens and green card holders. So if a regular person walk up to them and be like, you know, can you do my tax? They have no problem doing it. But you as a J1 non-resident, you go up to them and say, hey, can you do my tax? I'm a non-resident. I'm, you know, the tax treaty. They're gonna be looking at you crazy because they don't know what you're talking about. They're not familiar with the non-resident status, right? So when I'm doing people tax return for the first time, when they come, you know, they've been here for like 1 year, first year and second year, they come to me. I always look at their previous tax return, and it was done incorrectly, right? So if it was done incorrectly for a number of reasons, they could be like they missed out on the tax treaty, or they missed out on the filing status, or they filed a wrong form. We do what is called an amended tax return. So all is not lost, right? So I do amended tax return where people were supposed to get like $2,000 if they had done it correctly, and they get back like $1,500. We can do an amended tax return for them to get back the additional $500, right? It's just that the amended tax return, you know, it's a longer processing time, right? It takes longer because, you know, the IRS have to go pull up your old return that you filed incorrectly, plus this new return, do the research to figure out whether or not, you know, what you're amending is correct. So it's just a longer process. So you want to make sure that, you know, to avoid the amended process, you want to make sure that you do your tax return correctly the very first time, right? So the takeaway again is all is not lost. If you feel like you missed out on the tax treaty exemption or something was done incorrectly on your tax return, we can always go back and do an amended tax return to fix the issue. So that's the takeaway from this slide. All right. So again, you're gonna come across, you know, it's tax season coming up. You're gonna come across a lot of people reaching out for them to do your taxes, right? So here are two very fundamental questions that you have to ask, right? That tax preparer is: are you familiar with the non-resident tax obligation, right? And then, are you familiar with the tax treaty exemption as it relates to J1 and H1B teachers? And then you got people that actually try to do it by themselves, right? And they use TurboTax and they use some other tax software. These other tax software like TurboTax, right? They do not have the capability of doing a non-resident tax return. So automatically 100% it's going to be incorrect because you did it on the wrong form, right? So more than likely you have to get a software that knows how to do, that allows you to do the non-resident tax return. Okay, so those are like, you know, two fundamental questions that you have to ask your preparer. You know, are you familiar with the non-resident status? Are you familiar with the tax exemption treaty as it relates to my particular country? All right, and then so the tax process, you know, this is, I think, probably my last slide before we go into the question. I'm trying to keep it within an hour. I know sometimes I get carried away, but so you're gonna get what is called, again, we went over the W-2. You're gonna get your W-2 from the district, right? You can they're either gonna send it in the mail or you can get it from the portal. You need some sensitive information in order to file your tax return. You're gonna need, like, you know, if a driver's license or a state ID. So don't be you know, too skeptical if somebody asks you for those information, because you know you're gonna need those information to file a tax return. If you do not have a driver's license or a state ID, then that person might ask it for like your passport, like the first page of your passport, because they need like some sensitive information, right? And then you'll need the date that you came here, right? That's important too. And also your banking information. So your routing and account number. It's just better to have your routing and account number on your tax return for the IRS to just direct deposit that money into your account. You do not want to wait to get no check in the mail, because, as you know, a lot of stuff can happen when stuff is being sent in the mail. So they're gonna ask for your banking information, your routing and account number. So just prepare to just, you know, wrap your head around those type of sensitive information that they're gonna ask you for, right? And then you know, you want to make sure that the person is able to e-file your tax return instead of doing it by paper. I got people that actually do tax return by paper and then have the person sign it, then send it into the IRS. You want to electronically file a tax return is where you just send it. It's like an email, like you send it to the client. You just send it to the IRS electronically, right? And we provide that service where, you know, we send stuff electronically. We don't do a paper file. And if you guys want to reach out for more information, if you got questions as you're going through the process or whatever, you got my contact information is on here, either WhatsApp or call anytime. I'm available to talk you guys through any tax related issues that you may have, because, you know, coming to this new system, you know, is very, you know, even for people that lives here for a long time, tax is very complicated. It's one of those challenging topics. So, you know, you're gonna need person to kind of walk you through over and over again, in terms of if you have questions, right? So don't feel, you know, if you have a question, don't feel, you know, it's a burden to reach out. You know, I'm always open to answer questions, and I'm available to anyone that have a questions.
And I would like to add as well that Mr. Maxwell is in the WhatsApp group. We have WhatsApp group to support teachers who are trying to get to the United States. And we also have WhatsApp groups that are, you know, more intentional about stuff like the Overseas International Group that supports teachers in your transition. So he is a part of the group. So if you have questions and so on, feel free to communicate or interact with him in our WhatsApp groups. And I'll place the links in the tax information session group that we have. Just wanted to add that.
Okay, great. So yeah, like I said, the last presentation that I did, I went like way over. So I'm trying to keep this one within, you know, the hour markers. I know we're gonna have, like, you know, this is your first time, you're probably gonna have a lot of questions. So I'm leaving a lot of time at the end, so answer those questions. And then, you know, people learn better sometimes from just other people asking questions. You know, I know when I was in college, you know, I learned a lot from just the questions that's been asked in the class. So we're going to open it now. If you guys have questions, you know, I can answer any questions that you guys may have. I know we kind of go through that real quick. If there's a slide that you want me to go back on and just talk more about it, we can also go do that too. But this portion of the presentation is just for like questions, any question that you guys may have, or anything that you did not understand because I was just going too fast or so.
All right, I'm going to ask that you, if you have questions, guys, if you can post it in the chat, or you could just raise your hand, press that indicator to raise your hand, and then you can openly speak. Make sure that your camera is on if you're going to do that. If not, we'll just have Britt read the question from the chat, and then Mr. Maxwell will respond to the question. All right, so if you want to speak out loud, please make sure your camera is on. Just raise your hand. And if not, just type your question in the chat, and then Britt will say what the question is. Britt, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have 4 questions from the chat. So the first one is, what if you were given a substantial presence paper by the district from in your first year? So somebody's asking pretty much if they receive a letter or a document from their school stating that they have substantial presence in the United States.
Okay, so you don't get a letter. I'm not following that one, because you do not get a letter from the district saying that you're substantially here. It's only by you being here that you actually meet that test, right? So how it works is, for instance, that somebody come here in August of 24. You're here for August of 24. You're considered a non-resident. Then in 2025, you're still considered a non-resident. In 2026 is when the calculation to determine whether or not you meet the substantial presence test actually start taking place. So how they calculate that is, for 2024, they will do 1/3 of that year, and then 2025, they do 1/6 of that year. And then in 2026, they take whatever days you were in the United States. And if all of that is above 183 days, then you meet what is called a substantial presence test. So I don't know if the district can just give you a paper saying that, oh, you meet the substantial presence test. It's a math. It's a calculation math stuff. It's either you are, or it's either wrong or it's right. You know, it's math, and that's why I like math. It's not subjective. It's not subjective. It's very objective calculation that you have to meet to get the substantial presence test.
All right, so another one is somebody is asking that they said they're from Ghana and if they qualify for this type of tax return. I think
Yeah, so unfortunately for some of the African countries, they do not meet they do not have a tax treaty between the United States does not have a tax treaty between these African countries. And then some South American countries as well. The United States does not have a tax treaty. So unfortunately, the tax exemption does not apply to these African countries and to these South American countries. So you have to file your tax return, right? You're going to file your tax return, but instead of getting back all the taxes that you pay in your first and second year, you would have to pay some tax, right? You're just going to be treated as like a regular taxpayer. There's no incentive for you, pretty much.
All right, the next one is, I'm in my third year. Do I qualify to use TurboTax now?
No, mainly because, again, you're not going to be able to use TurboTax to do a good tax return, mainly because I would imagine that you came here in 2022, right? 2022 was your first year. So if you're from one of those tax-exempt countries, that means if you come here in August of 2022, August all the way to December, that's 5 months of exemption that you were entitled to. And then 2023, you get another 12-month full year of exemption. So then 2024, you're still entitled for another 7 months of exemption, right? And in order for you to claim those exemption, you have to file on the non-resident form that we looked at just now for you to claim that exemption, right? And so, you can't, TurboTax does not support non-resident form. It's only for like U.S. citizens and resident that people use TurboTax for.
I want to add to that before you share the other question, Britt, that when I just came here on my first year, a friend of a friend did my taxes through one of those systems where maybe it might have been TurboTax, I'm not sure, but one of those systems that is just friendly, user friendly, and you're able to do your taxes on your own. I did not benefit from the tax treaty. I did not benefit from it because it doesn't pick it up on the system that I was a non-resident, right? As Mr. Maxwell is saying. So it cost me in the long run. It wasn't until my second year that I went to H&R Block, and many of the people in that office didn't even know about it either. It was just this little man in a corner, this old man in a corner, and he was the only one, and he wasn't there every day. He was only there on Tuesdays. So he was the only one who knew about it. And when he did his calculation and he said, you're getting so and so amount, I was like, what? Does this man even know what he is doing? Because it was a lot of return, and it just amazed me that he was so savvy at it, and it also surprised me that so many people didn't know about it in the office, and they were doing taxes for years. So you have to be very careful of who you go to.
Yes. Like I said, I want to reiterate that, like I said, the majority of people here are not non-resident, right? They're regular U.S. citizens and residents. So most of the people that does tax here just do it for the majority. It's only a small segment, only a niche area actually do non-resident tax return, right? And the reason why you're able to get back such a big refund, Ms. Lindsay, is that in your second year, right? In your second year is when you're supposed to get back your biggest refund, mainly because in your first year, you're only here for like half of the year, right? In your second year, you're working from January all the way down to December, right? So all of that taxes that you've been paying from January all the way down to December, I see people getting back $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 in refund. Can you imagine those people that's not aware of this tax exemption,
right?
Missing out on like $8,000, $6,000, $7,000.
And even now, I'm learning something from your presentation, because I didn't know that after, I got the first 5 months and then I got the full year, I could still get some more months on top of that. I am so mad. I'm so upset that no one told me about that. So I'm still learning And I've
Correct.
been in the system for a little while and I'm still
Yes,
learning. So
because the tax exemption treaty is for 2 years. It's not 2 calendar year like the FICA exemption, right? So we have to catch 2 years is 24 months, right? So, a lot of people mess that up too. Even for the people that actually know the tax treaty rules, they actually mess that third part, that part up because it's for 24 months.
All right, so another question. I'm a fourth year teacher. I'm a fourth year teacher. Initially, in my first year, my district started taking out FICA taxes. I made them aware that I should be exempt from paying this tax in my first and second year. I didn't pay any FICA taxes in my third or my fourth year. Will I be penalized if I haven't started paying FICA?
Yes. So yes, you need to technically I guess what happened is they start taking it out and then they just never switch back on that tab to start taking it out. But so you should be paying that tax in your third year. So it's up to you to reach out to them to let them know, hey, what's going on here because I'm not paying this tax, but you should be paying that tax in your third calendar year.
All right, we have some questions in the chat, but somebody raised their hand. So let me just go in the order we received them. So the next question would be, which tax should we check our pay stub for to ensure we're not paying in the first year?
Gotcha. So on your pay stub, depending on what state you're in, because if you're in Florida, there's going to be three tax technically will come out of your paycheck: the federal tax, Social Security, Medicare. If you're in those states, like against South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, that has a state income tax, there's going to be 4 taxes coming out of your paycheck. So if you're in your first and your second year, right, only one tax. If you're in Florida that does not have a state tax, only one tax that should be coming out of your paycheck, and that's the federal tax. If you're in your first and your second year and you're in one of those states that has state income tax, only 2 taxes should be coming out of your paycheck: the federal and the state, right? If the Medicare and the Social Security is coming out, then you need to reach out to the district about a refund.
Okay, somebody asked a question and I think I know the answer. So somebody said, apart from income, what other factors can be used for tax refund processes? What about if you study while you're teaching? Do you get a deduction for tuition? And I say yes.
Okay, so again, everything in tax depends, right? So remember, in your first and second year, you can't do all those stuff that regular U.S. citizen is doing, right? So even though you're going to school in your first and second year, you're not going to be able to get all of that credit, the student credit. It's only in your third and your fourth year, if you switch over to that form, would you able to do all of the regular stuff that U.S. citizen and resident does. So you don't automatically, once you're going to school, you don't automatically get the credit, right? And a lot of people file incorrect tax return where they claim this credit, this American Opportunity Credit, and they were able to claim it mainly because they filed on the U.S. Tax form, right? So you're not eligible for that yet, right? Even though you're going to school, you're not eligible for that yet. So that was done incorrectly. And if the IRS catches that, then you can get into trouble for that again. So it's not automatically that you get that student credit, right? It's only when you become, tax residency when you meet the substantial presence test, you're able to do all of that stuff.
Okay. And to confirm that part, right? You can only apply for the American Opportunity Tax Credit a certain amount of time. So, because I was advised to wait until I am done with that 2-year tax break before you apply for that one.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, the 2 year. So you're here for 2 years, third and fourth year, then you can apply for the American Opportunity Tax Credit.
Okay. I benefit. Wait, before you go on, Brid, I benefited from that because I studied in my second year when I was on my J1, and when I filed my taxes, I didn't know the name of it. I'm learning the name now, but I did benefit from that, and I'm studying again now and I benefited from it again. So I'm not quite sure if you said it, you might not get it, Mr. Max.
Yes.
So
So there's two
So it's
tax
a situation where you can file for it, get it,
Oh.
or you can file for it and not get it.
Okay, so there's two tax credit that as it relates to going to school, right?
Right.
You got the American Opportunity Credit, which is for 4 years. You know,
Okay.
you go to college here for 4 years, you can
Okay.
claim tax credit for 4 years. That's the maximum.
Okay.
You can't go back to another college and go try to claim that credit again. Right?
Okay.
And then you got the learning lifetime credit, where this person just loved going to school or whatever. They also just get a credit for just going to school. And so there's only two: the American Opportunity Credit, that's a 4-year credit, and then this lifetime learner credit. You can always claim that credit, but it's only when you're filing as a U.S. citizen or resident can you actually do all that stuff, not as a non-resident.
So question, after we complete the first 2 years, right? Are we going to still use the 1040 NR to file taxes?
No. So we're going to switch over now because you're going to meet the substantial presence test. So you're going to switch over now to the 1040, the regular 1040, which is going to be the U.S. citizen and green card form.
Oh. So I have another question here. It says, if your third year started in August of this year and seeing each year filing caters to the year in the back, come next year, should we still use a non-resident, pretty much the same thing, non-resident form, or should we use a regular U.S. citizen form?
Say it again.
You just answered it. They're
Okay.
saying that their third year will be starting their third year started in August of this year.
Gotcha.
I've seen each year caters to the year in the back. Come next year, should we still use a non-resident form, or do we need to use the regular U.S. citizen form?
Okay, so let me just clear it up again. All right. So for someone that come here in, say, 2022 August, right? 2022 August, you're a non-resident. So August all the way down to December, you're a non-resident. You're going to be filing on the non-resident form, right? Then 2023 come around now, right? That's 12 months in that 2023 year. You still consider a non-resident. You're going to be filing on the non-resident form, right? 2024 rolls around, right? You're still consider a non-resident in 2024, mainly because you're still not going to meet the substantial presence test, right? And you still have 7 months of exemption in 2024 that you're entitled to. And in order for you to claim that 7 months of exemption, you have to file on the non-resident form, right? In 2025, you're going to become a regular person now. You're going to become a regular U.S. citizen, green card holder, even though you're a non-resident on your J1 status. You're going to meet the substantial presence test. And then now you can file in 2025 as a regular U.S. person, right? Hopefully I was able to clear that out.
Okay, Ingrid has her hand raised.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Questions. Firstly, how much does it cost to file on our behalf? And secondly, when we file in January, how long does it take for us to get?
Right. Okay. So because you're a part of Miss Lindsay group, there's a special offer. You guys shouldn't be paying more than $130, right? $130, $150. You're not supposed to be paying. I got people come to me paying $200, $300 to do your tax return. That's ridiculous. So there's a special offer for teacher. You're not supposed to be paying more than $150 to do your tax return, right? And again, my job as a preparer when I'm doing a tax return is to make sure that tax return is done correctly and hand it off to the IRS. They receive it, right? From the IRS, they take like 6 to 8 weeks max to send you your refund. But there's a situation where you might not get it in 6 or 8 weeks. You get what I'm saying? It might be, take a longer while because IRS probably pulled your tax return to review it or audit it to make sure that they got the correct information. It's my job as a preparer to work with you as best as I can to make sure that the IRS have everything that they need to process your tax return. So I don't just do your tax return and be like, oh, this is what you're getting and leave you. I kind of follow you through the process to make sure that you actually receive that, or any information that the IRS need. I help you gather that information ultimately for you to get your refund, right? But if everything goes well and we do not have any audit or anything like that, it should be like 6 to 8 weeks for you to get your refund.
Thank you.
So somebody, Allison has her hand raised.
You got a question,
You gotta
Allison?
turn your microphone on.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Allison.
Allison, can you turn your camera on?
No, no, I won't be able to. However, a question. If you have a J2 dependent, is it possible that you can file tax return on their
Yes.
behalf?
Yes.
Could
so
you
J2
explain that process to me?
Yes. So it depends on a J2. If that J2 dependent work at, have a job at, company and making money, they have to file a tax return. If that's what you're asking, they file their
No,
own.
what
They file their
if
own.
the
tax
child,
return.
sorry, if the child is not at the workable age, if the child is about 6-7 years old.
Right. That's why. Okay. So let me just go back to this presentation. Can you see my screen still?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go back. This is what I was trying to cover in one of these presentations, because this is a commonly asked question, right? Why can't I claim my child? So this is a non-resident form, right? For a normal U.S. resident and citizen, in these filing status right here, you will see head of household. For non-resident do not get the luxury of head of household. There's only these 5 filing status for you: single, married, filing separately, qualifying surviving spouse, estate, or trust. You do not have the luxury of claiming a child on your tax return when you are non-resident. In your 3rd and your 4th year, 5th year, when you switch over to the U.S. form, sure, you can do that. But for 1st and 2nd year, partly 3rd year, you cannot claim any child. Hopefully that answered that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Doreen.
You got a question, Miss Thompson? Get off mute and ask.
Oh, it's Mr.
Yes, it's Mr. and
Oh,
Mrs.
sorry.
Thompson. Good afternoon. All right, so we are both J1 teachers. So you said in terms of filing, it would have to be married and file separately.
Correct. If you guys are married, it has to be married filing separately. 2 J1 teachers, even though you guys are married, cannot file together. There's no married filing jointly as a non-resident. If you're a regular U.S. citizen, when you meet the substantial presence as a regular U.S. citizen, green card holder, you guys can file together, married filing jointly. But again, let me just show you this again. This is a non-resident form. There's not the filing status. There's not a married filing jointly. It's only married filing separately for J1.
Okay. And Mr. Maxwell, you say your information is in you're a part of the chat, right?
Yes, I'm a part of the chat. Yes.
All right. So we're gonna make contact with you very soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question, Mr. Maxwell. If there's nobody else with a question, is someone else? No. All right. So when teachers move over transition from J1 to H1B, right?
Mhm.
How is tax different for a single person
Mhm.
as opposed to someone with children? How is it different in
So-
filing and so on?
So it's taxes based on your status, like your non-resident status. So if you're moving from a non-resident J1 to a H1B, is still a non-resident. So it's not really no big difference in terms of how you're going to file your taxes, right? So it's the same treatment as a non-resident, because only like if you're non-resident or you're a resident, there's no difference in the treatment. It's just going to be the non-resident treatment versus the resident treatment as you switch from J1 to H1B. I don't know if that can answer your question.
All right, to add to that, right? Because once you move from J1 to H1, you then adjust your status because you're no longer a J1. So does it mean that the 2 years start over again?
No. It's no. It does not
I
start.
wish. We wish. We wish.
All right.
We wish.
Somebody asked a question. He said,
Right. No, it
since
doesn't.
African countries do not benefit from the tax exemptions, when then do we need to file our tax, and what happens if we don't? It's my first year and I'm a bit confused here.
Gotcha. So you have to file your tax return, right? It's required. I'm not sure if it's required by your program to file your tax return, but if you're going to be living in the United States and making money, everyone is required to file a tax return. And as a J1, H1B, to keep, that status also, you have to file a tax return, right? So it's a requirement that everyone file a tax return. If you're here and ultimately you want to stay in America, you get married or whatever, that's going to be a part of the process where you got to produce tax return to say, okay, if you're trying to get a mortgage here, you want to stay here, you're working here. If you want to get a mortgage, the first thing the mortgage people are going to ask you, let me see a tax return, right? Any form of bank that you go for a loan and whatever, they're going to ask you, let me see a tax return. So you asking me whether or not you need to file a tax return, the answer is yes. Everyone, once you're making money in America, and especially for the international teachers, you guys need or require to file a tax return.
All right, we'll take about 2 more questions and then we're going to have to end our session. We don't want to go too much over the 1 hour, but we're doing very well, Mr. Maxwell. It's just 5:05, so we'll just try to end at 5:10. So we'll take 2 more questions. Again, if you would like to interact, if you would like to become a client of Mr. Maxwell, you can reach out to us. We have different WhatsApp group for international teachers where we support each other and basically, do sessions like these, right? So 2 more questions. Mr. Rain, you have your hand up still, or this is an old request?
I think it's probably an old request.
So somebody was asking, how do you show your tax return? I'm not sure they're asking. I think they might be because you mentioned if you're applying for mortgage and stuff, they might ask you to show it.
Yeah.
So I think they're asking how to show it.
Oh, okay. So the person that does your tax return, they're going to give you a form. So they're going to give you this form, the 1040 NR or the 1040 whenever you meet the substantial present. They're going to give you a copy of your tax return, or at least you should request for them to give you a copy of your tax return. There's many people that have been doing their taxes and the person just tell them, hey, you're getting back 500 or you're getting back 1,000, but they never produce the form to that person to show them that this is your actual tax return. So you should request your tax return from that person that's doing your taxes. And then, once you go into those business place for loans and, to do business, they will ask you for it. Then that's what you give them.
Natalie asked a question that you addressed earlier. She's saying, if you're not here with your husband, how do you file? Again, if you're married filing separately because we're
Yes, you can. Yes, you need to file married filing separately. Correct. Your husband is not here. Your correct status is married filing separately if you're in your first and your second year.
Somebody's asking to share the International Teachers Group link in the chat. And also, a lot of people are saying thank you, Rochelle and Mr. Maxwell, for sharing your time.
Yeah, there's so much more that I want us to talk about, but we don't have the time. But I will do other sessions because I think we have other questions, like in terms of can you own a business? Can you do this? Can you do that? There are other sessions that we want to do for J1 and H1B teachers. So just stay tuned, and thank you so much, Mr. Maxwell, for joining us today. I'm sure a lot of people are grateful for the information that they have received, and they're looking forward to becoming a client of yours. Britt, could you please share the link for the WhatsApp group in the chat, and so that others can be a part of the WhatsApp group? Thank you again, Mr. Maxwell, for sharing. Do you have any final words before you
Yes.
go?
So yes, I want to thank you again for giving the platform to talk to your teachers. And this is, you guys don't get this information on a daily basis. You're coming into a new system. It's when I first came here and they're talking about taxes, I didn't know what they were talking about. It takes me a while to kind of learn this stuff and get familiarized with taxes. So hope you guys take away some good information from this presentation. There's a recording that you can go back and watch. Again, if you have any question, please feel free to reach out. So now is my downtime where I answer all of the questions and get to everyone. Now is the best time to call if you have questions, because when it comes tax season, I'm like super busy actually doing the work itself. So, I thank you again, and I really appreciate everyone joining.
Thank you so much, guys. Britt, did you share the chat link in the
I
WhatsApp
am
link?
about to do that
Okay,
right
so guys, if
before
you need to join the WhatsApp group, just send a request. It's a closed group because we only want teachers in that group. And we discuss things like these and other things that will help you in your transition. That's the link that Britt just shared. So you can copy that link. And we will share it also in that tax group that you joined, where we shared the link for this meeting or this session. So go ahead and click on the link and we will accept the request. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have other sessions in the future.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.